So wanted to talk about the story that Ben Norton put out recently. And I'm going to share my screen here. Um, so this piece, I have it on Consortium News, but it was actually written on the Gray Zone. But
Yep.
obviously, the Consortium News, it covers a lot of these pieces.
Mhm.
And so this was written on October 12th, 2020 by Ben Norton over at the Gray Zone. He's really great. They've done a lot of work showing what's going on in Syria. They've done a lot of work over in South America, showing like all the regime change um, um, transactions going on over there. But so what I want to do is I want to read like the first part of this, and then because then the rest of it goes into like the details. Um, all right, so it says leaked documents show how UK government contractors developed an advanced infrastructure of propaganda to stimulate support in the West for Syria's political and armed opposition. Virtually every aspect of the Syrian opposition was cultivated and marketed by Western government backed public relations firms, from their political narratives to their branding, from what they said to where they said it. The leaked files reveal how Western intelligence cutoffs played the media like a fiddle, carefully crafting English and Arabic language media coverage of the war on Syria to churn out a constant stream of pro opposition coverage. US and European contractors trained and advised Syrian opposition leaders at all levels, and young media activists to the heads of the parallel government in exile. These firms also organized interviews for Syrian opposition leaders on mainstream outlets such as BBC and UK's Channel 4. More than half of the stringers used by Al Jazeera in Syria were trained in a joint US UK government program called BASMA, which produced hundreds of Syrian opposition media activists. Western government PR firms not only influenced the way the media covered Syria, but as the leaked documents reveal, they produced their own propagandistic pseudo news for broadcast on major TV networks in the Middle East, including BBC Arabic, Al Jazeera, um, Al Arabiya, and Orient TV. These UK funded firms functioned as full time PR hacks for the extremist dominated Syrian armed opposition. One contractor called Incostrat said it was in constant contact with a network of more than 1,600 international journalists and influencers and used them to push pro opposition talking points. Another Western government contractor, ARK, crafted a strategy to rebrand Syria's Salafi jihadist armed opposition by softening its image. ARK boasted that it provided opposition propaganda that aired almost every day on major Arabic language TV networks. Virtually every major Western corporate media outlet was influenced by the UK government funded disinformation campaign exposed in the trove of leaked documents from the New York Times to the Washington Post, CNN to The Guardian, the BBC to BuzzFeed. The files confirm reporting by journalists, including the Grey Zone's Max Blumenthal, on the role of ARK, the US UK government contractor, in popularizing the white helmets in Western media. ARK ran the social media accounts of the White Helmets and helped turn the Western funded group into a key propaganda weapon of the Syrian opposition. The leaked documents consist mainly of material produced under the auspices of the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. All of the firms named in the files were contracted by the British government, but many also were running multi-donor projects that received funding from the governments of the United States and other Western European countries. In addition to demonstrating the role these government intelligence cutouts played in playing media coverage, the documents shine light on the British government program to train and arm rebel groups in Syria. Other materials show how London and Western government governments work together to build a new police force in opposition controlled areas. Many of these Western backed opposition groups in Syria were extremist Salafi jihadists. Some of the UK government contractors whose activities were exposed in these leaked documents were in effect supporting Syrian Al Qaeda affiliate Jabhat al Nusra and its fanatical offshoots. Okay, it says it right here that
Yeah.
these leaked documents expose this. The
Hmm.
documents were obtained by a group calling itself Anonymous and were published under a series of files entitled Op HMG, Her Majesty's Government, Trojan Horse, from Integrity Initiative. To covert ops around the world. Part 1, Taming Syria. The unidentified leakers said they aim to expose criminal activity of the UK's FCO and Secret Services, stating, "We declare war on the British neocolonialism." The Gray Zone was not able to independently verify the authenticity of the documents. However, the documents tracked closely with reporting on Western destabilization and propaganda operations in Syria by this outlet and many more, and many others, sorry. And as the Gray Zone reported in an update following initial publication of the story, the UK government told Middle East Eye that foreign office documents concerning the work of its contractors in Syria had been hacked and published online. So for anyone who is thinking that these documents are shit and that they can't be verified or whatever, because the Gray Zone is saying that they couldn't independently verify it, but the UK government told the Middle East Eye that they had been hacked and that the documents have been published online.
Hmm.
So that does give some sort of validity to this. And then
Hmm.
here is the link to the document. So I'll attach a link to all of this stuff.
Yeah. So again, it's like with with the Hunter Biden situation, when his lawyer asks for the hard drives back, that kind of gives validity to the fact that there is something there, right? So same thing here, when basically they're getting in front of the story by saying, "Hey, we were hacked and the documents were taken." Yeah, these look like they're probably the actual documents.
Right.
Right.
And the thing with this story is that it just reveals how, first of all, that that there is proof now that Western governments have been backing uh, rebel groups, right?
Hmm.
These
Right.
moderate rebel groups over in
Hmm.
Syria, right?
Right.
That these documents show how it was like a network of people that were working together. You can say a conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
Of these Western governments that they contracted out these firms to essentially just do PR to manufacture consent
Hmm.
for regime change. That's literally what this whole thing just encompasses this. And again,
Yeah.
he goes through each
And
part of this. I just wanted to read like
sure.
that was the like a summary of what he wrote in this. Um, but they talk about how just this one ARK, that one firm, they got $2.3 million
Right.
for training activists how to and providing cameras and different things so that they could and they also provided them training on how to talk to media,
Right.
Western media, to present certain stories. So this has all been concocted, you know.
Right. And just I think you and I discussed briefly yesterday that, and it's corroborated by the fact of what happened with the OPCW, right? That
Right.
was kind of, these things are working together. They infiltrate the OPCW. They've shown that all sorts of Western governments have put pressure on the OPCW to move people around, etc., to concoct this whole chemical weapons used by that evil Assad kind of thing. They've basically shown that several cases, as you know, the fabulous Jimmy Dore and many other people have been saying, and Tulsi Gabbard said months ago, it didn't make sense. They've had at this point like 4 whistleblowers within the
Yeah.
OPCW basically saying this isn't accurate. We try, the words that we had to describe our analysis on the ground were completely removed and replaced with these conspiracy government talking points, basically.
Right. And
Yeah.
really what this shows is that this shows how they do this so that you have, it's an appeal to authority. That's what this is, right? So obviously it talks about how the BBC, Al Jazeera, the New York Times, the Washington Post, these are really propaganda rags. That's what this is showing, that they are true propaganda rags for the government, okay? Where people, they go to these authoritative sources, really,
Right.
right? Because they have the experts and they just have years of just putting out information that who knows if any of this information that they put out is actually real, or like we've
Right.
been seeing here, it's all been manufactured and to
So,
bring out a certain narrative, you know.
so here's a little side question for you. I mean, my feeling is that in the United States, uh, of course, New York Times has been, giving reasons to go to war for CIA for a long time, but things have certainly escalated with Trump derangement syndrome at CNN and MSNBC and so forth. Is your feeling with BBC and the Guardian, et cetera, and European news sources, do you think this is a relatively new thing, the degree to which they're um, the mouthpiece for government propaganda, or is this probably always been there and we just haven't been aware? I mean, they've also been pushing war when the government wants it as well, I think.
So, and obviously this is just my opinion, but
Yeah, yeah,
I feel that these other news organizations, maybe when they first started off, it much like TYT, right? That they started off with a certain goal. They conjured up, or they garnered a certain support group, right? Because
right,
they were looking for, certain kinds of news they thought was independent, and not propaganda, essentially, right?
right,
But then these organizations, they get bought out, you know.
right,
And if you always have to look at who is behind these different organizations. I don't know who funds the Guardian and BBC and all this, but I do know that, like, for instance, I think it's Truth Dig or one of those that Chris Hedges, he was writing for, and I guess someone bought, like, some big donor
right,
bought this news organization, and they wanted them to write about certain things that they didn't want to write about, that they thought was like propaganda and stuff, and so
mm,
they ended up, the whole staff left. they
right,
just they just ended up leaving, they
right,
walked out. And so I feel like, unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where these news anchors and all this kind of stuff, I think maybe for them, they do actually believe all this stuff because that is the information that they're being fed. They're not actually going out and investigating these things. They're literally just reading whatever the New York Times says. So it's a
sure,
big cycle. That's all they're
right.
doing. It's just a circle. It's like a circle jerk, essentially, of
Right. So that
information.
I mean that's a big point. There are the people that the on camera talent or whatever for MSNBC and CNN that to them success means they get to read the news or whatever is put in front of them on the most prestigious platform, right? So in their best time slot, etc., that is success for them. They don't care what they're reading, and they'll do
Right.
whatever they have to do. But
Rachel
it is
Maddow,
disappointing.
Russiagate.
But it is disappointing. Yeah, it is disappointing with things like NPR and things like that, where I think
Yes.
somebody essentially from the State Department went there, right? Is that what it was? Somebody like a head of the State Department communications ended up going there, and now you can just see what's going on there. And even like C-SPAN with that guy that was gonna, what was his name, that was gonna run the debate, that was talking to
Oh, I
Scaramucci.
did see that.
It's like
Yeah.
C-SPAN, give me a break, C-SPAN. Are you kidding me? I
Yeah.
don't want to have to worry about whether or not C-SPAN is just delivering me the news or not.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Luckily they usually just put a camera on the whatever event and let it run, which is great.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, it just goes to show how dangerous this all is, because it's not all malfeasance. It's just malfeasance really at the top, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's almost like ignorant malfeasance on the side of the people actually reporting these things on BBC and and New York
Right.
Times and all this, right? Because there have been this year there have been a couple of reporters, investigative reporters, that they've left their organizations because because they've been so pro war that they could
Yeah.
not deal anymore,
Right.
and if and it goes to show how in like immersed the military industrial complex is to our media. They are almost one, like
Sure.
essentially the media just is a PR firm for the military industrial complex. That's what it's come down to. And that's what this
Right.
shows, And you had how many times
Well,
was
for the
Tulsi,
for the intelligence and military and industrial complex, but that's often one. I mean, often the
right,
CIA. I mean, the CIA is generating wars for the military industrial complex, so it's
right.
basically one. Right.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yep.
So, I mean, how many times did we see Tulsi go on these different shows and or even on the debate stage? Okay, Kamala Harris, right? That was her whole big comeback, right? Because she
Right.
had, instead of being able to defend her record that she's so proud of, right? And
Right.
what did she do? She went and did ad hominem attacks on Tulsi, calling her an Assad apologist. Okay,
Right.
how many times was she attacked over this on the View? She was attacked over this. I
Yeah.
mean, just everywhere she's been attacked over being a Assad apologist.
And
And look,
that's one of the most blatant examples too, because if you look, you can look back and find video of Obama saying, "Oh yeah, I'll talk to any adversary. We have to talk to our adversaries to cause peace and create treaties." And it's just like, it's so childish.
right.
It's so silly to talk like that. That's a problem to go on a congressional investigation with Dennis Kucinich and many others, and to talk to various sides and do the job that Congress is supposed to do, which is find the truth on the ground.
It's diplomacy. Her
It's
her job
diplomacy
was
101.
diplomacy.
Yeah, it's diplomacy 101. The
Right.
fact that she wasn't willing to take exactly the CIA talking points of what was happening there as the truth, and they went to find the truth for themselves, is exactly what her constituents and the American people should be expecting of Congress to do.
Right. And the
Yeah.
fact that that they went after her for wanting to know facts before acting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And think about, because we haven't been doing that, because we've been led by these different propaganda rags,
Mm-hmm.
right? On the situation that's going on there. What has happened? You've had hundreds of thousands of people die. You've had millions of people displaced. You've ruined a country, right?
Right.
I mean, the region is very unstable.
Well, so that's right. Stephen Kinzer had a recent article. He's saying, like, it's Libya is the gift that keeps giving. Basically, their local region now is having problems, and there's government, like a potential for civil war. I forget where it was, but like in a boundary country, because of this issues bubbling over to neighboring countries. Yeah, horrific.
Yeah. So I think, that I think this is a really important piece. And I think the other part of this that I really wanted to talk about was that, now you have the BBC has launched an attack on Vanessa Beeley and Ava Bartlett. And this is Vanessa Beeley. She put her Twitter thread. This is Mark Italiano. I haven't really heard of this site before, but
Mm-hmm.
they had Slow News Day, and Slow News Day, they cover a lot of Assange stuff. Um, but Steve Poikonen from Slow News Day, he was talking about this in this interview that he did with Vanessa Beeley, and in this Twitter thread, you can see how the BBC just attacks her, pretty much telling her that she's not a real journalist, and essentially what it comes down to is, I guess, that the BBC is doing some sort of documentary on the White Helmets, right? And they were asking for Vanessa Beeley to comment on things that she has said about the White Helmets, because she has exposed the White Helmets as just being a part of Al Qaeda. It's an Al Qaeda auxiliary, right?
Right. Right.
But the White Helmets has been sold, and in that article by Ben Norton, he does talk about it. They have been sold, and they even didn't they win like some sort of like an Oscar or an Emmy Academy Award, like something like that. They
There
they
was a
won,
documentary, essentially. Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Yep.
which was actually funded. It was done by ARK, this group that they
Right.
talk about in the leaks. Um, but that they she exposed them for being this Al Qaeda auxiliary, and they wanted her to essentially back it up, I guess, but she's already backed up all this information. She's shown all of the interviews that she's done with people, that she actually is on the ground. She's not reporting from somewhere else. Like, she is in the trenches, you know what I'm saying? And she's talking to the people over in Syria.
Hmm.
She's talking to leaders. So, I mean, and ultimately they are saying that Vanessa Beeley has been the one putting out propaganda, I guess, against the White Helmets and against US and UK governments, which, doesn't that sound kind of like they're calling for the US and UK governments to go after her, which is exactly what they're doing to Julian Assange, because Julian Assange exposed the war crimes that were being committed by these Western governments, right? And essentially, that is what Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett have showed in that is happening in Syria. They've
Right.
exposed the war crimes being committed by these Western governments. So who's to say that they're not next? Like, how can the BBC be launching this sort of attack on someone when Julian Assange is being well, now the hearing is over, but he's trying to be extradited to the US for exposing the war crimes. So it's essentially, it would be the same thing, like
Right.
it just goes to, and I don't even know how much the BBC has talked about Julian Assange, but it just goes to show how the media, the mainstream media, they have their marching orders, and now their marching order is to now go against these people. It wouldn't surprise me if they went after Aaron Mate. You know what I'm saying,
Sure.
for what
Oh,
he's done. I mean, who's next? That's
I
the
mean, so
problem.
it's, yeah, it's absolutely true. If you're anti-war and too successful in your audience, in the audience and the reach you have, then absolutely it puts a huge target on your back. There's no doubt about it. Um, yeah. So yeah, I mean, and that, just like the whole white helmets thing, it just kind of ties into the fact that this is a really well crafted, um, strategy on the parts of multiple governments in Syria to paint this whole false picture and narrative of what's going on, to control the media, to have these various actors that make it seem okay, the white helmets are the really good guys, sort of like that, and yes, there's these chemical attacks happening and these poor people that are dying, and um, it's a really excellent um, uh, a chance to learn how they work, basically, with this stuff getting exposed. People paying attention should watch for these same indicators in other regions,
Exactly.
though it's most likely going to continue to be centered on the Middle East for a while, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just that, but like, really, what this shows is that this storytelling that has been done by the mainstream media is
Mhm.
only allowed because people have plugged out. All they want is it's almost like the bird, the mama bird feeding the babies. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like they
Right.
want their news already masticated and like gone through all the bile and all that kind of stuff. They just
Right.
want you to like chuck it up and give it to them, and feed it to
Yeah.
them. That's it. That's all they want. If people were more involved, if they were more engaged, if they were actually looking and holding these organizations to account, then this wouldn't happen. Thankfully, we have these investigative journalists that they do expose what's going on.
Right.
But look at what's happening to the people that are exposing these things. And
Right.
if you aren't questioning, if this doesn't make you question everything, you should question everything that
Right.
comes from mainstream media and the government. That
Right.
this is what this proves. But
And
people unfortunately won't see that.
you bring up the point that ties in with our first topic is basically, um, so with the corruption in mainstream media, and how they've been propagandized to such an extreme extent, we are so dependent on what little facts slip through by these awesome folks on YouTube and Twitter, etc., that the fact that they would shut it down like that, this action they took over the New York Post article really gives us reason to worry that they would just shut everything down if they had to. People have to be ready to jump to Rockfin
Mhm.
and Parlor and whatever alternatives we possibly have out there, to keep the communication going, because it absolutely could happen. I can't say that if you know Biden were to win, that they wouldn't pull the strings to basically shut down communication, any kind of criticism of the government, any kind of anti-war um, criticism could particularly be completely shut down.
Well, and you know what? You bring that point that you're bringing up right there is so great, because what it shows is that the only like now they're calling for um things to be exposed because it's Trump.
Mhm.
But if the Biden administration comes in, people are definitely they're going to call for, they're going to want censorship. They're going to want for people to to not be able to hear more voices. Think about what happened with Alex Jones, and
Right.
what happened with a lot of these other who is it,
Well,
Stephen Crowder or whatever the fuck his
well,
name.
yeah. Think about how much did you hear about anti-war stuff during Bush, and how much did you hear about during Obama? Right. Even that was even before they had, I think, the complete control of media as they do now. Think about all the criticism Trump gets, but how many press availabilities does he do versus Obama? Obama went like a year or something without talking to anybody.
Mhm.
I don't even remember. Was he
And no
regular?
one and no one even cared. It
And
wasn't even
nobody
a big deal.
cared. Nobody cared. They'd just be fed their talking points from the press secretary, and that was good enough for them, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Even when it came down to like Hillary Clinton's emails, it was always the whole like how I said, in previous weeks, they if you really look at the Julian Assange situation and you're thinking that it's right for him to be tortured the way that he's being tortured because he leaked some emails,
Right.
you're really fucked up, because you're not looking what is the content of these emails. You don't care about what's said in the emails, you care about who exposed the emails.
Right.
That makes no sense.
Exactly.
That makes zero sense. Really,
Ex-
what you should be caring about is what's being said in these emails.
Exactly. And the fact that Hillary like never pushed back on it. She never said, nobody ever said that these things weren't true.